My name is Robert Reinhardt. I'm from VideoRx, and I am here to talk about OVPs, or online video platforms. The mission of this session for me is really to help make sure that you go through the right decision-making process when you're evaluating, I would say, any way to deploy your video. I wanted to have a focus on OVPs because they're talked about a lot. I mean, they're here at the conference. And to be honest, for a lot of what I do for my role as a consultant or as a video solutions architect with my team, I have with me Roberto from my engineering team. We build players. We build backends for clients, whatever needs to be done, particularly if a client doesn't want an OVP. But oftentimes I am in the position to either help justify from a ROI, or return on investment point of view, is it better to build something versus buy something, right? The whole build or buy dilemma. So I necessarily need to know what's going on with OVPs. So with that caveat, I will be going into my session reviewing characteristics of OVPs. I'll actually go in and show you the accounts that I have on Brightcove and Uyala and Kaltura, as well as just talk about other alternatives. I won't bother going through the description again. Here's my contact information. I know we've already been delayed here just a tiny bit, but in case you have to leave and you want to be able to contact me, get in line for the reception, beverages, robert@videorx.com. You can find me on Twitter as well with Rob_Reinhardt. I also have articles on transitioning.to, but more recently I've been writing for Streaming Media Magazine. I have an article coming out in June, and I just did one in January on off-the-shelf players, which coincided with what I did yesterday at the pre-conference workshop. So in the description I talk about, I think more and more, especially if you participate in LinkedIn groups like this live video or the live streaming groups on LinkedIn, and I asked this at my workshop, so many people are on LinkedIn participating in video conversations there. I'd like to just see a show of hands. Anyone? Okay, because there's always a lot of it. I'm amazed at how much interesting chatter there is on LinkedIn, and if you're not, obviously LinkedIn in terms of business contacts and how you get business is one thing, but just the amount of information that consultants like myself share freely there. There's a lot of people who ask questions that I normally wouldn't answer unless I was under a client engagement, but because there's so much back and forth, it's interesting to get into the mix, and just because there's a lot of salespeople that will get on there, and I just like to offer sort of, not representing any one particular company, just what options there might be. And I think I'm only mentioning this because I think oftentimes when a company like Google has YouTube offering so much for free these days that the inclination is to, well, I'll just use YouTube, or I'll use the lowest cost solution that will get my content to market as fast as possible. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that, because for lots of content producers, if you're creating content and you're not going to try and build a technology that showcases your content, because they're two different things. And that's why OVPs have grown up over the last decade, to help people who really don't want to be in the business of building the experience for their videos. They just want to focus on content and get their content to market. Then the freemium services might make more sense. But again, for the type of clients that we represent and help at VideoRx, they want to build something that is going to make them be able to sell their company, right? And if you're putting all your content on YouTube, you're probably not going to be approached by a Yahoo to be bought, right? Because your whole point of being in business is to try and sell your content ultimately, whether it be through advertising or if you're using a pay-per-view. So I'll talk about that a little bit, because freemium, in my definition, again, freemium is the combination of free and premium, and it's really just a way, to lure you into a platform. YouTube's essentially and Vimeo to a certain extent are the freemium services that I'm referring to. I'm not saying there aren't others, but they're probably the two biggest players in that freemium market. You get a lot of stuff for free. You want to start doing more stuff, you're either doing royalty shares or you're paying for the service that you're getting. Like I just mentioned, it's a way to bring people into the fold who don't want to be so worried about building out infrastructure for that content. But I think it really boils down to, and I say planning for uncertainty. I use that phrase a lot in my session slides. If you went to my workshop yesterday, I used planning for uncertainty a lot. I introduced my session with a slide similar to this, but I've changed the bullet points here. Uncertainty, because most of the people I represent, they're lucky if they can map out, especially if they're brand new in the space, where they want to be in 12 months. Obviously, they hopefully have a business plan and they know how to do all the stuff that they want to do on their business model end of things. But it's really important to make sure that you have some kind of roadmap, because if you just think you're going to launch with one thing and then suddenly switch to something else, well, it's easy enough to say you're going to do that, but what's that effort going to be to just switch to something else? It's not necessarily going to be easy, and that's actually one of the things I'll bring up when we're looking at OVPs is the portability of your data. Like, what do you actually own when you're using an OVP? Make sure, and that's where, again, how the technology plays into your business model. Where do you want to be present? Do you need to have a native app? Are you selling videos on a pay-per-view basis, a subscription model? Those high-level business decisions are going to most certainly affect how you approach the deployment of your video and consider an OVP. As I mentioned yesterday too in my workshop, YouTube is a vital part of anyone, I should say any successful video content play that I've seen done. One of my clients at VideoRx is lynda.com, and even though they have a monthly subscription model and everything, they don't use an OVP. They built their own player with our help. Last year we just launched a whole new player on lynda.com, and they encode all their content. They use Akamai and other CDNs to deliver their content, but they're very much in control of that distribution process. They control that content, and they own that content. That's the other thing. Unlike a lot like studios and Netflix, where you're essentially licensing the content and you have to play by the rules that the studios hand down. If you're a licensee of content, then that can also affect what type of OVP decision you're going to make. Is the OVP going to offer technology that supports the protection that is going to be mandated by that licensed content? But going back to YouTube, whether you use YouTube as an OVP, putting your content or a selection of it on YouTube is almost always going to be, I can't think of, unless you're building out an internal OVP, you're going to basically have your own video management solution because you're in financial services, you're in healthcare. You don't want anything outside of your firewall. Well, of course, YouTube's not going to play into that. If you have a sales arm and you want to sell your healthcare package, then sure, you might have something on YouTube. But if the content you're representing needs to stay behind a firewall and can't go outside of your network, then of course you're not going to use a YouTube. That goes without saying. So what is an OVP? It's such a blanket expression. Even the publisher of Streaming Media Magazine, Joel Unico, and I were in a argument a little bit last night over drinks, because he was just saying, why did you call your session OVP? That's an old term. You should have called it multi-screen delivery. And I'm like, well, he's like, Google multi-screen and Google OVP, and you tell me what comes back. And I did that. As soon as I got home, I was sober enough, or got back to the hotel, I went to Google. And it's funny, if you type in multi-screen deployment or multi-screen delivery, you'll still see CDN listings show up on Google, right? Akamai was in the first 3 or 5 results for me. I didn't see Bright Cove or Uyala or any of those the popular OVPs mentioned. As soon as I typed online video platform, I got the things that I'm talking about here. So take that, Joel. But it's OVP. It might be an outdated term. It is funny. I approached other vendors than what I'm representing in this session, and they just flat out said, we're not an OVP. And I'm like, really? Because you really seem to have the characteristics in an OVP, but they just for some reason or another didn't like that label. But these 4 bullet points, in fact, I'll just go to my little slide here. I built this out just to sort of, these are the sort of pieces of the puzzle of an OVP. They're usually going to store your video for you. They're going to let you add metadata, how much metadata. And when I say metadata, that means categorizing it, doing anything that you have to do to finesse that the information around your video. I'm calling metadata for that for all intensive purposes. They're 99.9% of the time going to be encoding your video for you. They're going to transcode it into all the different flavors. Again, think just all the infrastructure that someone who wants to just focus on content, they're going to need all these services. They'll do all the transcodes. They'll most likely set up streaming for the streaming backend for you as well, although oftentimes you can bring your own CDN and they'll plug it into their system as well. They'll have a service layer, an API, so if you want to extract analytics out of the system, they'll expose it. And of course, some player technology. That's probably at the end of the day what a lot of people will focus on, because that's what the eyeballs are looking at is the player tech. But it includes all 6 of these. And I'm going to go ahead and backtrack here. That's where I'm glad I had that conversation with Joel, because I started to use the word multi-screen. I went back and updated my slides a little bit to talk, that's probably the biggest change in the Flash to HTML5 world, or the almost exclusively Flash world of video to the now hybrid world of HTML5 and Flash, depending on what you're doing with your video. It's insane still how much reliance there is on Flash for any monetization of video. All the big players still have, all the big video content players in the market. When I say players, companies like ESPN or whatever, almost all of them have a solution that's still very much Flash-based. And if you're going to to mobile devices, then you're looking at native apps that they've built to monetize it, because of course they're big enough to afford the type of funding that would be required for native app deployment on the scale of that they need. The streaming distribution is also going to, this is probably one of the biggest differentiators of OVPs, and it's really hard unless you just start doing low-level analysis, which I've attempted to do for this session, of just, because they're not necessarily transparent, the OVPs that is. They'll just say, they'll just give you a fancy chart and show you, look, they'll have like an Android icon, they might even have a BlackBerry icon. We can get your video everywhere, but they leave out specifics. They don't say how they're getting video there. They don't say if all the options that they offer are going to be available on those devices, right? If I want DRM, well, are you going to give me DRM across all these devices, or is that a subset of those devices? Those are the kind of questions that you want to have if you're looking to protect your content. Is that a double slide? That is a double slide. I got to delete one of those slides. So the general stuff, and what I didn't include in that diagram that I'm going to come up to in just a moment, are sort of the breakdowns of what those APIs and service layers can work like, how you monetize the video, is there a paywall or ad serving capability added to the OVP that you can use with your content. Are they going to handle user authentication for you, meaning they keep track of your users? Are you going to maintain any kind of user database on your own that you have to then integrate with an OVP? Analytics, of course, is getting bigger and bigger in terms of importance. It's funny, I have a lot of smaller clients that demand analytics but do nothing with the data, right? I mean, it's just like they want to know how many people have watched it, but they're not really getting nitty gritty. I know Chuck in the session before me, when he was going through e-commerce video usages, was talking about capturing events from video, knowing when video stopped, knowing how far into the video they got. I still think that there's a long way to go before smaller content producers really start to capitalize on knowing how to take any analytic information and making something happen as a result of it. I think the more the OVPs start to get into bridging those gaps between, well, did it actually, just like you use Google AdWords, like did it complete a sale? Did it actually complete some kind of action that you were looking from the user? Admittedly, too, though, I would say most of the clients that we've serviced at VideoRx are in subscription models. They're not trying to sell individual video clips. They need to track how many views of content. They want to know which areas of their library are popular, so that they'll focus attention on growing that area of their catalog, and they want to know which areas are weak, so that they're not necessarily putting as many resources into it. But their use of analytics in an e-learning space could also be a whole different ball of wax that has nothing to do with other people's use of analytics. DRM too. That's sort of the big the white elephant in the room in terms of just what does. That's probably one of the first conversations I have to have at a high level as a video solutions architect when I'm talking about what you're looking for in your distribution. Just what do you consider DRM? Are we talking like play ready DRM, or we're going to go to buy DRM and we're going to pay some pretty hefty licensing up front and device activation fees? Or are we talking AES 128 encryption? So there's a big difference between protecting your content and using what the industry has called DRM. I don't think I've ever seen services such as Brightcove or Uyala misuse the word DRM, but I know people that are new to the content space or don't understand just how fragmented the device market is compared to the desktop market, just what DRM means. So just, again, it's about expectation management with your stakeholders on any project so that you're all on the same page. I already went through this diagram. I may come back to it, but again, these are the core portions of any OVP that's been on the market for any length of time. I should say that this also serves as the model if you want to build your own video distribution platform. Well, these are essentially all the components you need to build out one way or another, and you may be able to use off-the-shelf technologies to augment your own distribution setup. Obviously, if we were going to plug I should have made an overlay for this that showed like an Amazon Web Services overlay for this that, your storage could be S3, your metadata is being stored, in some kind of database, whether you're running it on an EC2 instance database or you're using Amazon's database architecture. The encoding could happen with Amazon's Elastic Transcoder, or maybe you're building your own FFmpeg encoding farm. Your streaming could be Wowza based. It could be Nginx based. You can build out all these separate components on your own and have a reasonable entry into your market. But it's probably not going to be as fully baked as any of the OVPs that I'll go into and show you. At the very least, I would encourage. The good news these days is that because there's increasingly more and more competition in this space, almost all of them categorically will give you a free trial without having to give them anything. Like you just, your email to activate the account, but that's about it. No credit card is necessary. So if there's anything, I would encourage you, even if you're determined not to use an OVP, check them out. See what they do with the video, so at the very least you understand what you would have to build if you wanted to build something comparable, and know that, I don't need this much here because the admin is going to be handled by professionals that know what they're doing. We don't need to dumb it down so much. APIs are important if you need to let other people access the data if you're licensing content and they want to be able to audit views of content. That would be important. And of course the player technology. Again, that's one of our focus points at VideoRx, building players. It's what we did in the Flash realm prior to the HTML5 transition. But player tech, you could easily spend a ton of money building player tech that works in browser if you want it to be from the ground up. Are you going to use something off the shelf like a JW player? These are all considerations that, again, an OVP takes care of for you. But you're married to what they've decided to use. So if you don't like their player tech, well then chances are you're not going to be able to just say, I want the streams and the encodings from your solution, but I want to plug them into my player. Most of if I was, the next time I do this session, I would maybe make another overlay showing how making some lock links between the components of any OVP that you're not likely going to be able to break very easily without causing yourself huge headaches. Like anytime I've talked to people at the OVPs that I'll be going into in the second half, they get a little, they don't like to encourage you to sort of start using different components, unless it's a CDN. They're all up for, open to, oh, you already have an existing contract with Akamai? Great. Well, we can account for that. But when it comes to player tech and even encoding tech, if you want to start tweaking things differently, they can get a little shaky on the phone or in your WebEx meeting that you're having with them. Again, I'm going to go through some quick points of what to look for before I break out into some demos. But and again, since I'm more on the tech end of things, what I'm looking for is just how comprehensive they are delivering the video. What are the protocols that they're using? Just the kind of questions you would want to ask on a phone call with any representative from an OVP. Get them to talk low level about how they're taking the video, transcoding it, and putting it out there. Even if you decide to use them for everything, chances are they're using a big CDN anyway, like Akamai, to stream everything, so they're going to be limited to what that CDN can do for them. But again, just make sure you understand what's going on with the video and how it's reaching. Because it comes down to, like, if they say, oh, well, we do have Android playback with our OVP, and it's in mobile browser. You don't need a native app. Our player will work. It's just like, okay, well, so Android, how are you getting video to Android with VOD content in mobile browser? Chances are it's not going to be anything that we identify as streaming, because HLS is so problematic still on Android. Our TMP doesn't work without Flash now. So they might just be doing HTTP range requests. And how are they protecting it? Are they using token authentication at least? How are they trying to restrict that video, if they're restricting it at all? So again, just make sure that you don't find out across each of the platforms that you want to support, how are they actually getting that content there? It shouldn't be a question mark when you decide to invest in an OVP. What are the player customization options? That's pretty straightforward. Can you, all of them are going to have allowances for putting your logo in it, changing, color schemes on the player. But if you want to start adding features to the player, chances, I'll take e-learning as an example. Like, if I want to control video speed, if I want to be able to go from 2 times speed to half speed for playback, chances are I wouldn't be able to do that with any OVPs off stock player. And it would probably be very difficult to implement that consistently across experiences. And I would say the most important aspect is just, again, what do you own in that process? I mean, it's sort of a tricky question to ask. I mean, again, as a consultant, asking clients what they want to own out of the process, because and it's a loaded question, because of course most people aren't going to say, well, I don't want to own much, right? They probably want to feel like they have ownership of what's going on. Of course, there's cost involved with owning your processes, owning your management layers. But again, it's just happening more and more frequently where our clients want to get to market as quickly as possible with whatever great idea they have for video content. And then and they almost always have this idea that, well, after 90 days or after 6 months, we'll be building something in the background and we'll just switch to that system. And I'm like, well, are we just leaving everything behind? Because there's no big export button on OVPs that just say, like, export everything I've done here so that it will work with my system, right? I mean, they might let you make queries against the database so you can extract data. Again, that's going to be in the API layer. But just, again, how much of that can you reuse and take over into a new system? What if they went out of business? What if, what's your contingency plan, even if you want it to continue using that service, they just, for some reason, weren't around anymore? Again, questions to ask. So now I am going to, how am I doing on time? Oh, good. I want to end my talk in about 10 minutes so that I can have questions, and then we'll go. So I'm going to demo, and this is, I'm not going to go too deep with this, but again, I feel I'd be remiss if you didn't at least understand what the OVPs, the big ones that are out there, if you've never gone into Video Cloud, what it could do. I've already, of course, it's like a cooking show. I've got some prepared samples in there. They actually include samples in your trial accounts to play around with already. But of course, I would encourage you, take something all the way through the process so that you can just see what your options are. I've uploaded the X-Men Days of Future Past trailer on both across Video Cloud, Backlot on Uyala, and also on Kaltura's demo, which I have open over here. So let me actually keep these three tabs together. So I'll just start with Brightcove. No order of importance here, but I'll just point out, because I did a lot of Flash development, I think it's hilarious if you right-click at least their desktop GUIs, they presume, for the most part, that when you're going into the administration layer, that you're not doing it from a tablet. Like, well, of course, you're probably on a real computer if you're managing your content. You're not going to be just like in a plane and trying to manage content. They almost all have a non-Flash rendering of their dashboard, but be sure to not just look at it on the desktop so that you know what to expect. This, again, it's more just for legacy reasons. All of these OVPs probably spent, I would say, at least high six figures, if not, oh yeah, we've got some crazy stuff going on back there. They've spent a lot of money on their front ends connecting to their back end. So it's not surprising to me that when I right-click this, that I'm seeing the Flash player menu. So basically, everything I'm seeing here is Flash. If I go to Uyala, you'll see that it's not Flash. I'm right-clicking on their different things here, and it looks like regular HTML. If I go to Kaltura, and again, this is their Enterprise Edition product. Kaltura, of course, has a Community Edition, which is open source and free. If I right-click, I'll see that this is Flash Player as well. So a lot of Flash still in these administration interfaces. So just, again, make sure you look at them across. I'm going to focus on sort of the content aspects of these administration front ends. So if I double-click on this X-Men trailer that I uploaded, I'll just, because I showed all that other, in my previous diagram, I talked about video files. The transparency is awesome that you get for the paid services. Kaltura is not as fully baked as this, at least not easily found if it is there, but I can see all of the renditions that Kaltura has made of this. And what I find interesting is that it will show me the highest bit rate it transcoded. It will show me the lowest bit rate. I know the bit rate of the trailer because I downloaded it. It's just the original 1080p. And it's like a 9 megabit per second trailer that Apple encoded. And the highest encoding I'm getting out of Brightcove is 2 megabits, right? Not saying that couldn't be changed, but again, there's no, you'll even see here, if you read the text, that I can actually say, retranscode this clip if I find out from a salesperson at Brightcove or a friend of a friend or wherever that, oh, Brightcove just updated their encoding algorithms and they're allowing different resolutions for different things. I can actually just click the retranscode, and I don't even have to know what's going on, but I'll just be assured that I'm now using the latest set of transcodes as Brightcove's team has updated it to. You can go through each of their bit rates and see how they came out if you want to compare quality. I won't have time in this talk, but while you won't necessarily see the low-level encoding parameters unless I downloaded or streamed this and opened up Media Info or VLC to try and do some introspection on the stream, it is interesting just to compare the bit rates that come out of Brightcove versus Uyala. Let me continue. So, and again, you can preview the encodes here. And again, just based on what you need to do, it's funny to see things that were talked a lot about in the days of Flash past, like cue points. We used to talk about cue points a lot. Cue points are still important because they can trigger things to happen like ads, how consistently cue points will trigger across all the different platforms. Again, if you have a specific use case, you can at least try it out, see how it works. But they've got a nice little GUI here. I can go in and add cue points, do some things, trigger events, trigger other things to happen, maybe switch to another video if something, basically cue points. They're event markers in the video, and and it's in the GUI here for me to play with. I don't want to say, the other thing that I wanted to just quickly highlight on each of the platforms is how easy it is. Most of them, of course, at this point in their maturity cycle, I can get the embed code really quickly. And this is another point of distinction. Just because it's an OVP doesn't mean it's your website, right? That's a big distinction I would make versus a Kaltura type of offering. Kaltura, pitches itself as a YouTube of sorts, in the sense, just like you go to YouTube as a site, it's a portal, it's a front end. I can go and browse videos, I can do things with it, I can rate videos, I can use it internally if I want at a company, Kaltura that is. But when I go to a Bright Cove or any other OVP in that realm, they're not offering me a website, right? I mean, not typically. You're using them strictly for all those other verticals that I showed you before. I know I say verticals, those different service layers that are in most OVPs. So the most I'm getting out of this, and from an integration point of view that's quick, is embed code, right? Okay, I set this up. So, I set up an awesome playlist. I set up my advertising campaign or whatever. What do? Well, I still have to get it into something, right? So OVPs almost always assume that you've got, again, like if you, I think, who was it at Stream Media West? Brigham Young University had a good session where they were talking about their partnership with Uyala and the just how they had to build a website. It wasn't like they didn't still have administration needs that they had to do, but in order for them to plug content in, they were using the OVP to basically manage that content layer in terms of categorizations and encodings and players, because I think they were actually highlighting the fact that they have a hook app, right? If you wanted to play video, it was actually a really misleading title that Stream Media West. It was supposed to reveal the secret of playing HLS on Android. Well, their secret was we have a native app. So it wasn't like they had some special sauce that let it play in a mobile browser. It's just like, well, we built a native app to ingest a HLS. So kudos to us, and whatever. I just thought that was weird because it was labeled sort of as I thought it was like a how-to tech session. I was going to see something like that no one had ever seen before, and that's not exactly the case. So now I'm looking at Backlot, and what I like, this is a much more. I have a spreadsheet. Unfortunately, I don't have it ready to go yet. I will publish this shortly, either after the conference. I actually did this for a client, and I just need to update it, and I wasn't ready to release it as of this session. But, a minimum monthly cost, I went from YouTube, Vimeo. I even include JW Player because they're starting to get into this platform where business where, you can not only license JW Player, but you can upload videos to JW Player's site. They used to call it long tail video, but I have Bright Cove, Uyala, and Kaltura all across there. So, the entry price for Bright Cove, $99. You can get started if you actually want to use it in a commercial sense. $500 for Uyala, and the starting cost for Kaltura Enterprise Edition. Again, there's a free version of Kaltura that you can use. The Community Edition is $750, and even that's a little tricky because you can run Kaltura software, the Enterprise Edition, on your own EC2 instance. They have a hosted version as well, and so it gets like how that minimum cost could probably vary greatly. But I'm not going to go through this spreadsheet, but I will do my best to make this available. I'll tweet about it or whatever. If you got my contact information and want it at a later point, I'll tell Dan about it so he can put it into some collection of resources that will be available after the conference. But I tried to I have at least 32 points. I might add more, but it's just a quick reference chart. And again, it's something that I'm continuing to work on. Let me keep moving. So what I really like about Backlot is that they've got a very polished front end. I love this dashboard view. Of course, I have a really weak trial account. I'm a failure at this point. I don't have any viewers, and I've only had 2 views of my trailer. But if I go in and manage the content, I'm just going to look at the I just uploaded another trailer, God's Pocket, starring the late Philip Seymour Hoffman. And what I like about this too is that it even gives me the source. Where is the source? I think I just scrolled past it already. The source is right there. So I can see already that my uploaded file, the original trailer that I got from Apple's site, almost 10 megabits there. And the highest resolution that they created was much higher than Brightcove, 4.4. But that's not saying a whole lot. I mean, maybe they just have a bad encoding algorithm and they need more bits for the same quality. I mean, I'm a compression geek, so I know that it's not just about numbers, but it's interesting. That's over twice as high as the bitrate I just showed you on Brightcove. Also, the number of renditions that they have, quite a few. I would say there's at least 3 to 4 more renditions just off the top that I saw here. And they really give you a lot of information. I mean, the way that I'm really impressed with whoever they have responsible for their UX has laid this out. And unfortunately, again, I don't want to go too late, so I want to wrap up. Kaltura, I think, is the most complex of this. I don't want to say needlessly complex because there could be someone from Kaltura here, and I don't want to get them all defensive. But there's just so many different, especially if you're using a hosted version, the trial account. There's the KMC, which is my media console, or I can't remember, the multimedia console, I don't know. But this is where you have to go. Again, this is a Flash GUI. I can go through here, and I'll just show you again. Like if I want to take this trailer and I want to get some embed code out of it, it's pretty nice. I mean, I can go ahead and it'll update on the fly. Almost all of them will do this too. I just might not have showed it on those other two. But I can come down here, grab the embed code, and I'm on my way. And it's at least easy enough to read the embed code. So you'll notice that there's no auto detection on my aspect ratio. That looks pretty bad as a player, right? I mean, it's just got a lot of letterboxing going on. So I could probably stretch this out, and that might be a little bit more manual for me to do that, change the width and height here. But at least it's easy embed code, easy to customize embed code. But what I meant to say about Kaltura before I got distracted, as I am known to do, we have different layers of administration here. And again, to give credit to Kaltura, you're getting a portal, right? It's not just content management and getting players built that you're going to ultimately put onto some other management system. Kaltura is a front end as well. So it has a couple different layers of administration. There's this administration, and then I'll just come over here and show you. I think I have it open in Chrome. I did have it open in Chrome, but I'll just log into the, no, it's right. No, that's the shared player. Let me just find it really quickly. No, that's the video cloud. See, I knew something got lost when I changed it over, but let me just go to media space. There it is. So this is, I just set it up for like a dummy video RX thing, and they've got it loaded, but this is, out of the box, like I can have it's almost like buying any content management system or investing in any CMS like WordPress, right? Or Drupal or whatever. I get a lot right out of the box. I get a website ready to go. I could obviously have my own URL here if I'm hosting it on my own, easy to set up. But I have a portal to consume this video. Again, it's very YouTube-like. There's channels, there's categories, there's this slider going back and forth. I'm logged in as this is how a guest would see it. I can log in with my credentials because they're taking care of user authentication that way. So if my purpose, if my stakeholders need something that is an internal YouTube, Kaltura is great for that, right? Because I can get up and running. It's going to do some streaming. It's going to take care, it's going to do a lot for me out of the box. And, it's as close to, paint by numbers with a website that you can get probably with video content management. Having said that, and I don't want to get into any kind of sales pitch here. I should mention that it's not that difficult of a task. I'm not going to say it doesn't have a timeline associated with it, but one of our clients at VideoRX is Comanche Ranch. It's a private ranch in Colorado, and the gentleman that owns this ranch has It's a private site, so if I wanted to, if you just went to ComancheRanch.com, it's right away going to ask for a login. The connection's a little slow here, but this is a WordPress site. You wouldn't necessarily know it's a WordPress site, and I'm probably not telling you anything new by telling you that you can take the WordPress engine and do wonders with it, right? And the good thing about something like WordPress, I don't care what it is, if you're using Joomla, Drupal, whatever your CMS du jour is, you can find developers that know how to use it. If I wanted to find a Kaltura developer, that might be a little hard, right? If I wanted to do low-level customizations that aren't just simple customizations that I'd want to make. But if I wanted to build a portal using something like WordPress, I can do that. For this client, we built a full back end that doesn't look anything like the WordPress admin, enabling automatic transcoding. I did all the encoding setup, built a REST API that connects to another service that we built. So you can do a lot with off the shelf, like I was saying before when I showed all those pieces for an OVP. If you're considering building something from scratch, it doesn't, again, there's still timelines associated with it, but you can start with things that do a lot for you out of the box. Again, some people laugh at WordPress, but I'm always impressed. I consider, like anyone who's been first to market with a product, and the cloud's no different, right? Amazon, when it comes to their web services, may not be as good now on some features. I'm not saying they aren't, but I'm just saying now that Google and Microsoft had the benefit of looking at Amazon to see what they could do better and make a competitive offering. So it's always going to be harder for Amazon to stay on top of that pack. But the benefit, of course, is that we're all, like anyone who built things with AWS is very familiar with it, and to transition to anything else requires a learning curve that who wants to pay for that, right? So that's the harder challenge that anytime a competitor comes into the market. So the only reason I say that is that even though WordPress as a content management system might be laughed at by some, if I was talking to someone at ESPN, I'm like, we're not going to use WordPress. Of course they're not. But if you're building a niche market, or if you want to build any kind of video deployment system, and you're starting from scratch and you're going to grow your catalog over time, chances are you could probably build a very scalable system with WordPress, depending again on just how have a roadmap. How many users are you going to have, and where are you going to be? Where do you want to be? So I just wanted to throw that in there, sort of as an example of that. Building your own video platform is possible. You're not writing everything from scratch. And there I go. I think I end it with at least, I want to make you get out of here so that you can put your bag away. Who likes carrying a bag while you're drinking? So thank you for your time. Thank you for your wait earlier while we were working things out. And I will take questions, but by all means, if you want to get on your way out, and please fill out your evaluation forms because I appreciate any feedback you have for me. Thank you. Questions? Yes?
When do the players offer experience where you just hook up the player and somebody's playing already and it's the experience?
So what's the question there?
Content sort of like you get midstream or something.
Oh, how do you insert mid-roll content?
Well, no, like when you open up the player.
Right.
Content's already playing. Let's get logged into the midstream.
Right.
Television experience.
Right.
Put it on your channel and something like that.
Right. So how is that done?
Is that possible?
Okay. So obviously if it's a live stream, it's a live stream, but more and more, and this is becoming, I don't know if I'd call this something that's happening more in the definitely starting last year with clients of mine, we had more scheduled VOD as live. So people had pre-recorded content, but either because of licensing deals that they had set up, they had a window to play this content back. And so I couldn't tell you, it's not something I've looked at specifically if I could do scheduled playback. I remember talking to Brightcove, though, about their live event platform and that things could be scheduled. So I have a feeling, but that was more specifically if you wanted to have pre-roll content show up before your live stream. So But I have a feeling if I can schedule that to start before the live stream, that I could probably just put anything, a longer form piece of content in there. But that's a good question. I'll definitely make a note of it. Feel free to email me later too about it. But I do think that that's what I find interesting from a monetization point of view is that I think people that I haven't seen it used in this way, at least not popularly, using it as a way to get people to buy content eventually. Because if you have scheduled airplay of content and people come in halfway through and it's like, oh man, I missed it. It's just like, well, you missed the free live viewing of it, but you can come back and buy it, right? I know that I live on Bainbridge Island outside of Seattle, and I think Creative Space, there's a company that does a lot of live training, like with Photoshop. They get experts to come in, and the classes are free while they're live. But if you want to come and look at the archives, or you missed the first half or the first day, you have to come back, and that's their whole monetization model. So I think, and that's legitimate enough. I think I don't know. It's funny, and not that I want to get into a whole philosophical discussion about like kids today, but I think if you at least enable paths to letting your content be viewed at some level at a cheaper cost or at a free cost, that people are more inclined to spend money because they know, like, well, I just won't miss it next time, or whatever it is that they have to convince internally to legitimize the purchase on their end. So, but that's a really good point. Any other questions or follow-ups? Like, no, let's get something to drink. Let's go. Let's break it down. I look forward to seeing you at the rest of the conference.